Hello and welcome to the Black Adoption Project Theory of Change video. I'm going to talk you through what the Black Adoption Project is, what we are doing, and the difference that we hope to achieve. So, first things first, what is this all about? Well, there are differences for Black children in adoption in this country. Their outcomes are different to children from other racial and ethnic backgrounds. And this has been a stuck problem in the UK for a long time. Over the years, there have been lots of efforts to try and sort this problem out, and these have been based on largely what people are assuming is the way to do things, but also a range of research and evidence about how things should be approached and how things should be done. But unfortunately, these projects have not had much impact, and so we still have this problem where Black children in adoption are experiencing negative and different outcomes compared to other children. So the Black Adoption Project is a partnership project that recognises and believes that London has a unique opportunity and responsibility to make a difference for Black children in adoption, but also Black communities and Black adoptive families. And for several different reasons, including the numbers of Black people that live in London compared to the rest of the country, we feel that with a long-term commitment and a partnership approach, we can make a difference. And so the Black Adoption Project, quite simply, is about us working together to develop and implement action and change that improves the futures of Black adopted children in London. So I mentioned that this is a video about our theory of change, and some of you might be wondering, what is a theory of change? So a theory of change is a tool that helps us to understand what we are going to do in a project and to make sure that we have thought properly about it and considered things like our assumptions, potential problems we might encounter, and what change we actually want to achieve and how we are going to achieve that change. So you might see this picture on screen from freshspectrum.com with the question mark in the middle of the two boxes. And the person there on the left is asking, could you provide us with a little more detail on step 2? So a theory of change is a way in which we are able to get enough detail together on all the steps of the project to keep going with the project, to progress to the next stage. And with our theory of change, we developed this collaboratively with different groups of people. So we had a workshop with Black community leaders and campaigners. We had a workshop with people with different lived and professional experience of Black adoption. And we had a workshop with Black adopted children. And also our project team did lots of work and had lots of ideas. And all of this came together after these workshops into what we call a theory of change. And this is our theory of change. Now, you should be able to see, you should be able to access the theory of change using the link on the page, on the web page that you are on, and you can download it and zoom in to read all of this writing, because it'll be quite small on your screens right now. But I'm going to talk you through each section in a bit more detail so you understand what we're trying to do. So to start off, hopefully in the middle, you can see what looks like a river with some arrows. And this really shows the journey and the direction of our journey, what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. It doesn't necessarily mean everything will happen in a step-by-step order or one thing after the other, but it's just giving you an indication of where we're trying to get to, and all the things that we're going to do might happen in a different order. And, it might go forward and then back sometimes and forward again. And we might jump around and things happen at different times in different phases. But ultimately, we are working towards this goal down here. And I will talk you through that in a moment. So firstly, the Black Adoption Project, you'll see there, it says creating better futures for Black adopted children in London. This project, as I said, is focused on trying to reduce those differences, those disparities between Black children and children from other racial and ethnic groups in adoption. We want them to have equal outcomes compared to other children and, better futures, as it says there. So I'm going to tell you, first of all, a few of the issues that have got us to this point. Really, these things are why the Black Adoption Project was born, why we want to do something completely different to make a difference for Black children, Black families, Black communities. So you'll see there on the right what needs to change in an arrow. So Black children do not have equal outcomes in adoption compared to other children, which I've just mentioned. For example, they wait longer to be adopted, and they're more likely to have a decision made that they will no longer go on to be adopted, which is really sad and means that they will be cared for in other settings throughout their life. We also have racism, racial discrimination, and bias embedded across systems. And so what that means is these systems then don't work for Black children, Black families, and Black communities. They're not trusted. They benefit non-Black people, and the issues in these systems aren't being fixed over the long term. There's lots of short-term fixes taking place that aren't making a difference. Black families also face barriers to adopting, including racism. This is a big problem. We also know that, there's a lack of families coming forward to adopt, a lack of those that come forward being approved for adoption. And we also know that some of these families have had bad experiences with adoption systems, and they don't have a community of other Black adopters around them. We also know that awareness raising activities do not engage Black communities. So the way that adoption agencies promote adoption and try to attract people to come and explore adoption, the marketing and the way that's all done isn't involving Black communities in the design and delivery, which means that they're actually not receiving the information. The marketing is not reaching them. It's not targeted to them to reach them. And finally, adoption services are not providing effective support. So we know that, Black children and families are experiencing adoption services that don't have staff from lots of different backgrounds. They lack staff that are Black in particular, and some staff don't necessarily have the skills to work with Black children and families well, and they're not equipped to provide effective support. And so this is a big problem. And these are the problems that have led to the start of the Black Adoption Project. And these are the issues that we are trying to change. So what we're going to do consists of 4 things. Investment. So this project, as I said, is led by Adopt London. They are primarily funding this, but also there are other stakeholders such as Laurel Brown Training and Consultancy that are contributing in other ways, such as time in kind. We're going to work in partnership, as I've already mentioned, with communities, Black children, Black adoptive families. And then we're going to test out different initiatives and pilots to see the difference that they can make. How do we really tackle and address these stuck issues for Black children? And we're going to evaluate the changes that we make to see if they have a really positive impact, to see if they didn't make a difference, or worse, that they maybe make things worse. We'll be evaluating what we do so we understand what to do next. Maybe we do more of things that work well, or we have to stop some of the changes. And so all of these things are being done to help us achieve these 5 goals here. What we want to do is ensure there's a level playing field for Black families throughout the whole adoption process. Every step of it, they are not disadvantaged or facing barriers. We want to reimagine a system that meets the needs of Black children in need of adoption. We want Black communities, to understand and care passionately about formal adoption and talk about it as a normal part of life. And then we want Black adopted children to have access to the support they need throughout their childhood. And finally, we want Black children and families to be supported by a confident, anti-racist and culturally competent workforce. And so we've got 5 goals. 1 is about families, 2 is about systems, 3 communities, 4 children, 5 the workforce, social workers, leaders, managers, those working across adoption systems and partner organisations. So how will we do all of this? Well, one of the main things that we're trying to do differently is work differently as a team. We want to empower Black partners, Black communities, Black leaders, Black children to play a leading role as equal partners in this project. We'll be evidence informed. So we will use evidence and research that already exists to direct how we move forward, but we'll also undertake our own research to inform how we progress this work. We're going to be authentic. We're going to recognize we're not perfect and we make mistakes, and that's okay. And we will learn from our mistakes and be open and honest about that in the process. We also want to just continually be on a journey of anti-racism, acknowledging, accepting that racism does exist, even within our own organisations and our own lives, but we are committed to taking action to get rid of it. And this might be complex. There are lots of organisations involved in this. There are lots of different people. The task that we're trying to achieve is really challenging. And so we want to embrace all of that and be flexible so that we can respond to things that emerge and adapt. And we're going to test and learn. So all the changes that we implement, they'll be tested and we will look at what we learn from them. And as I said, where there is good learning, positive outcomes, positive change, we can keep going and scale them up. But we might also learn that certain things don't work and we need to change things a little bit or stop some things. But that's fine. We are open to that and we want to make a difference. So we want to focus on that learning so that we are really having an impact. So I'm now going to talk you through, well, what is the impact that we want to see? All of these things, what difference do we actually think it is going to make? So starting with children, we want the impact of the Black Adoption Project to be that all Black children know what resources they have access to, financial resources, but also wellbeing resources such as mental health support. We want Black children to understand their heritage and identity, especially as they may not know about their heritage. We also want them to have access to knowledge and understanding about general Black history and the history of this country as it relates to Black continents, Black nations, and Black people. We want children and young people to be supported in their mental health through the adoption process, including emotional and mental wellness. And we want children to feel a sense of belonging in their Black families. And the difference that we then think we will see is that Black children feel empowered, they feel seen, they feel safe, and they feel represented in the world. We want the Black Adoption Project to achieve some impacts for the workforce. We want Black staff to have resources, supports, and opportunities to thrive in their work life. We want adoption support teams to be skilled and confident in supporting Black adoptive families. We want decision makers and people in positions of authority or seniority in Adopt London boroughs to be equipped to advocate, to speak up, to push for and drive change needed to improve adoption outcomes for Black children and families. We want practice, so how social workers and other staff do their work with children and families, and practice models, so the theories and the evidence and the guidance around how they do their work to meet the needs of Black children and families. And we also want an impact to be that there are opportunities for Black children and families to experience more racial and ethnic diversity in their adoption journey. So they see more Black staff in the teams that they encounter in their journeys. We think that this will then lead to Black children and families supported by a representative, anti-racist and culturally competent workforce team. And when we say representative, we mean staff who not only look like Black children and families, but also have their values and other aspects of identity. And so they represent them in different ways. And then in terms of the impact that we want for families, we want families to have no barriers, to experience no constraints to adopting, no disadvantage. If they want to adopt, the process doesn't disadvantage them compared to other people. It's as easy as possible. And we want Black families to trust the system, the adoption system, and have fewer bad experiences and more positive experience. Because we think the difference that we'll see if this happens is more families coming forward to adopt and therefore being supported through the adoption process, then being positive about their journey. And then there's more Black families available to be matched with Black children. So then ultimately there are more Black families adopting Black children. We also want to see impact across systems. So we want to see targeted marketing and outreach in Black communities to increase understanding of adoption for Black children. We want the government, central government, to be clear on the needs of Black children and adoptive families so that they can speak up and push and drive a clear narrative, a clear story, and a case for change, a need for change. We want the impact to be more prospective adopters starting the adoption process and staying all the way through until they adopt a child and not having to drop out along the way for whatever reason. We want more adopters to be Black, so to have a more diverse pool of approved Black adopters with different identities, not just being Black, but some, maybe from the LGBTQ plus community. Some may be single, some may be older, some may be younger. Lots of different Black adoptive, prospective adopters in the pool approved. And then we want more Black children with adoption plans being adopted. And we want all the policies, the protocols, how things are done in adoption services and systems to be inclusive and fair for Black children and families. And ultimately, we want support that's provided to these families to be better understood as in terms of the needs of Black children and families, their needs being better understood and met by Adopt London. And the difference we think we will see is that the structures and processes are able to then recognise and respond to the unique needs of Black children, families and communities. And we have a system that therefore meets the needs of Black children in need of adoption, a reimagined system, something different to what we've got now and we've had for a long time that is not working for Black children and families. And the final impact we want to see is with communities, that the people in communities and the organisation in communities that are well known serve as influential ambassadors, supporters and of our work and actively promote adoption. And we want to work with partners in communities. We want to work with communities together to design and deliver solutions to the adoption challenges impacting Black children. And so we want to remove any barriers to us working collaboratively with Black communities to co-design solutions. And we think that Black communities will therefore be able to really drive the change across systems that's needed using their strengths, using their skills, using the assets that they have as equal partners. And that will ultimately lead to us seeing Black communities understanding and caring passionately about formal adoption, so adoption that's done by the regional adoption agency process, and to talk about adoption as a normal part of their life. In the same way they talk about other aspects of family life, adoption is spoken about normally and regularly too. So all of these impacts take us to our overall aim of the Black Adoption Project, the main thing we are trying to achieve with this project, and that is Black children who need an adoptive family can have one. That's the ultimate aim of the Black Adoption Project. So in terms of where we are now, we're focusing on developing our pilots, so the things we're going to test and learn from, so that we can get them started. We also are going to do some research and evaluation, not only on the pilots, but also on how we are working together as a partnership, working in this way to try and achieve change. What can we learn from this approach and what difference does it make? We will then be looking to set up our stakeholder groups, including young people and people that work in research or evaluation. And then we will seek out funding. All of this work is funded primarily by Adopt London, and we give some contribution in kind as Laurel Brown Training and Consultancy. But for us to deliver this work and to deliver it properly and in a sustainable way, it does need funding, and that's also where we are going next. And finally, to just establish and confirm partnerships with communities and other organisations that will help us deliver our aspirations for this project. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you are now clear on what we're trying to do here in the Black Adoption Project team and why we're trying to do it. You can read the detail of this, as I said, by clicking on the link on the page that you're accessing this video on. And you can always contact us on the email addresses on the screen for any further details or questions. So thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.